Good evening and welcome to Midnight Movie Club, and finally, my review of Midsommar. Now, I know, I'm a month behind, and that's thanks to the film being released here in Australia on August 8th instead of early July, like most other countries. But if you're still keen to hear my personal thoughts on the film, then thanks for sticking around, and let's get into it. Since the film has been out for a while now, in this review I'm going to go over my non-spoiler critique first, then give you my rating, then I'll move into the spoiler discussion section, but I will give a fair warning beforehand, so without further ado, let's just dive into it. Midsommar was written and directed by Ari Aster, the same man who gave us last year's Hereditary, and stars Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, William Jackson Harper and Will Porter. The film follows Dani and her boyfriend Christian, who are going through a bit of a rocky time in their relationship, when one of Christian's friends, Pelle, invites him and his mates to come home to his village in Hälsingland, Sweden for their fabled Midsommar festival. Christian decides to let Dani tag along. What begins as a carefree, shroom-filled, idyllic getaway slowly turns into a violent, brutal and bizarre tradition that the visitors must acclimate to their ways, or else they will suffer the consequences that not taking part entails. So to kick things off, let's talk about Midsommar's cinematography. It is absolutely fantastic. So many shots of this film could be hung up in an art gallery and wouldn't look out of place. Most of those shots come in the second and third act of the film though, with the beautiful location of the Swedish countryside and the awesome sets that are in them. The way they shoot around them is just amazing. Whereas in the first act we get a lot of close-ups and things feel a lot tighter and claustrophobic. We get some really nice close-ups of Dani in the opening moments that really establish her as a character and her anxieties. The way shots linger as well add to the social awkwardness that Aster so effortlessly creates in his films. When you feel like a conversation has ended and want to now move on and cut from that to the next shot, Aster holds it there a while longer to really let that awkward uneasiness seep in, enhancing the anxiety of the scene even more. He can turn a simple scene of visiting your friends into a tension-filled moment so easily, and I just love that about his direction. In many ways, I felt the first hour of the movie was very similar to Hereditary, and just the way that anxiety and tension was built up around the character interactions and the grief that comes into play. The camera work in the film is just brilliant throughout and will have you in an almost dreamlike state. The upside down twirling shots that come into play as we get closer and closer to the village where most of the film takes place are great to prepare you for the trippiness to come. Moving on now to performances, and they are class from everyone. There is a real range of emotions quite a few of the characters have to go through, and they do it with ease, always feeling organic and not once out of place. Florence Pugh is awesome, and as I said before, especially in that first act, it was really on her to bring it with the grief she had to show and the feelings she was having about her relationship. Then when things get crazier later on, she really kills it. The same goes for Jack Rayner. His character was basically the worst boyfriend you could ever imagine, but at the same time, and this may just be me, you do feel like he is an okay guy deep down, but that he's just weak when it comes to his mates' peer pressure and other things. Rayner managed to make me actually see a little bit more to the character rather than just a one-dimensional dickhead. Will Porter, William Jackson Harper and William Blågren, I think that's how you say his name, sorry if I said that wrong, all put in solid performances as well. I found all of them together, especially in the first half of the film, to be hilarious. Everyone's comedic timing was on point. I'd honestly love to see Aster do a dark comedy or something like that, because the Midsommar script was so bloody funny in places. There was a scene on a hill, and I won't spoil anything yet, but if you've seen it you will know, where they're all sitting on a hill after doing something, and it honestly had me in tears. The whole theatre was cracking up. I've been to comedies before that I've barely cracked a smile at, and here I am at an Ari Aster film that involves pagan cult rituals and I'm pissing myself. Maybe that says more about me than the film, but either way, this film will have you laughing at some point. This was all just down to great dialogue from Aster's writing and the brilliant performances in front of the camera. Also, something else I'd like to quickly touch on is that the film had this artwork at the beginning showing the acts of the film, and it was beautiful. It was just really different, and I loved how it opened the film up, almost like it was a play or something like that. We also see some similar artwork throughout the film on the sets and on the costumes, and it is really cool looking. It just gets you sucked into this place and the culture within it. The sets were really magnificent, and the way they used them and filmed in them was great, making for some really interesting shots and moments. Sometimes I found myself looking in the background of locations instead of focusing on the characters, trying to make sense of the markings and paintings on the walls around them. The attention to detail that was put in was really noticeable. Another visual element of Midsommar that stood out for me was the effects, both practical and CGI. The practical effects in a couple of scenes in particular are insane and just make the brutality that much more visceral and shocking. I was also a big fan of the CGI effects used too when it came to how they distorted the visuals, making them proper trippy. One thing I found really cool was the grass and the foliage and some scenes where it would move as if it was breathing almost and growing around people. It was super cool. At one point it even made me feel a little queasy, but not to the point where I had to look away. Give me all the gore you've got and I'll be fine, but show me some flowers and weeds moving in a weird way and I'm spewing. Talking about gore anyway, and something that made the gore we got even better was the sound design. I loved how the hits some people took sounded so real. They didn't go for the over the top thud or splatter sound effects. It was just body meet something hard, and it whacked really hard, and it sounded much more realistic because of this, in turn making the effects even more realistic as well. Now moving on to the score by Bobby Crook, and I loved how much it started off sounding like a fairy tale, something akin to Snow White or something like that, but quickly turns as we are shown one of the more horrifying scenes near the start of the film. It was one of the best scenes of the film for me, and here is where the score shone through. It almost sounded like wailing sirens droning throughout the scene, building to its gruesome reveal, and I loved it so much. The score managed to conjure feelings of wonder and fantasy, all while delivering suffocating pain, and I really loved the score for that. It complemented the visuals greatly. The score really helped in creating the overall atmosphere in the film, where the atmosphere changes so drastically, as with the first act you have full-on Hereditary type stuff. It feels similar in that regard. It is very downbeat and full of pain for our protagonist. Then we have the wonders of the wide open space of Sweden. Then we have the hallucinatory sequences of trippy weirdness, and then the rituals of madness we just don't understand. And the score had a lot of responsibility in trying to fucking merge all of those themes together, and it done it so well in my opinion. For me personally though, I loved the first act of the film, and I really wanted that sort of atmosphere to continue on throughout, but as I said before, there's a pretty dramatic shift about halfway through. This obviously comes with a change in setting, colour and other things, but I really just did prefer the doom and gloom of the first half. It was what I've came to expect from Aster since Hereditary. But not every one of his films can be Hereditary, I get that, but for me the atmosphere created in the first half just carried far more weight to it. At the end of the second act, going into the finale, it felt more like a surreal film to me, with nothing much having too much meaning behind it and losing its way a little bit. I really liked how at one point we see someone question their culture and their beliefs, judging them because of it, and we see the villagers responding back, saying it's just their ways and how they do things, it is their traditions, and it may seem weird but not to them. To them, it's special. I really liked that and was hoping that it would be expanded upon. It could have went into how we judge different cultures around the world that are minorities and what they do in different religions, and how we see our way of life being the right way and every other way is stupid and barbaric. But sadly, instead of expanding on that theme, it's quickly blown over and we move on, and I felt that's what the film was missing towards the end, an actual point. Something it was criticising in today's world, not even critiquing it, just showing it and what it's like. To me, it seemed like the whole second act was building to something a little more, but in the end we just got surreal metaphors for toxic relationships and breakups, which is fine, but everything that was happening to the characters was just happening for seemingly not much reason at all. For the length of time we spent getting to know the cult and their ways, it would have been nice to know a little bit more meaning behind their madness. To me, the plot just wasn't up to standard in the second half of the film, and that really let it down for me. Instead of feeling for the characters and the situations they were in, I just felt like I was watching them being pranked or something, like that. I didn't feel any real urgency or threat for them, even though they were in life or death situations. I just never felt scared for them much, or just much for them at all in that final act. It was a strange experience. I'm not too sure how to put it into words, but to me, this film was just that, an experience. Also, the pacing in places seemed to get bogged down and slow a little too much as well, and I feel they could have trimmed the runtime maybe by another 15, maybe even 20 minutes, but I'd say probably about 15 minutes, and it might have tightened everything up a little bit. The only way I think I can put it without spoiling it is that it started off really well, then peaked just over halfway through, then things just started happening for the sake of weird things happening. There wasn't too much to it after that. But I have said everything I wanted to say spoiler free now, so now I'll give you my rating. Don't go into Midsommar expecting anything like Hereditary. Go in with an open mind and you will get some enjoyment out of it, and even if you don't, you will and should appreciate the artistry behind it. It is a horrific, hallucinatory fantasy tale of breakup and delivers on all of those levels, but falls flat and suffers in its plot and narrative. So with all that said and done, I'm going to give Midsommar a 3.5 out of 5 rating. Let me know in the comments section what you made of it. So now that you've heard my non-spoiler review and rating, let's move on to the spoiler section where I just want to discuss and bring up certain things that happened in the movie. So warning now, spoilers ahead if you have not seen the film yet. If you have, then let's get into it. So first off, let's go over something else that annoyed me a little about Midsommar, something I couldn't really touch on in non-spoilers, the off-screen deaths. There were, by my count, 3 off-screen deaths, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but I think that's the number, and I have no idea why. Why would people just go somewhere and disappear? It happened to Will Poulter's character and the British couple who were brought to the village by Pelly's brother. I would have loved to have seen what actually happened to them, not just the aftermath, as we can tell by the end that they had been skinned or some sort and made into twig people with fruit in them. I really wish we could have seen their deaths and exactly what went into them being skinned and what kind of ritual was attached to it. That for me was a little disappointing. Also, another thing that didn't really go anywhere either was the deformed kid who was writing their version of the Bible, I'm guessing. They killed one character and that was it, we never saw them again. I thought with how important they were to the village, something would happen there, but it never did. So if you really have anything more about that deformed kid, any more information on it, please do put it in the comments section just down below. It might make me appreciate that character a little more. But now, on to one of my favourite parts of the film though, and it had to be the cliff diving sacrifice scene. I loved the reaction from the characters in this scene, especially Danny's. The way the villagers landed and the sound design when they did was all just perfect. And then when the other villagers come on with a mallet to kill the old man who didn't die from the fall, it was very sick and dark, but kind of funny in a way. Or maybe that was just me, I'm a sick bastard. Like, he's dead already after the first hit, and then they just keep going until his face looks like a bloody pizza. This is where the visitors realise how mental this little village are, and I was expecting a lot more backlash from them, but apart from old mate Simon, who disappears soon after saying he's leaving, everyone else kind of continues on. I don't know about you, but during the night, I would have got my shit and been long gone. Thesis or no thesis. But I loved the whole lead up to that moment where the woman plunges herself off of the cliff. It was pretty obvious that it was a sacrifice coming, but even though you could feel it, the way they built it up to that moment was great, and it's created a lot of tension. As I mentioned in non-spoilers as well, just the effects and sound in that scene were on point. Another scene I loved and want to dig into is near the beginning, and this is when we learn the fate of Danny's sister, mum and dad. So her sister's hooked up the exhausts of the car to her mouth via a pipe and fed another pipe into their parents' room, taping the bottom of the door so none of the emissions escape. I loved the build up in that scene and how we followed the tube all the way up into their rooms until it revealed what had happened. The way the score worked with the tracking shot of the camera was great. The lighting from the fire engine sirens mixed in so well both with the audio and the visuals. It was Astor at his best in my opinion. Now I know the two shouldn't be compared as they are completely different, but it was in that scene I seen shades of Hereditary, and we see shades of it all throughout the first act. Danny's crying felt a lot like Toni Collette's wails of anguish, and the awkward dialogue interactions between characters that carried a lot of subtext were reminiscent of the dinner where Annie goes off on one at Peter. So even though the two films are so different, it is nice to see both have that Astor DNA in them, and that he can keep that in his films even when they explore different themes. I also felt that the bunkhouse barn that all the characters slept in was Midsommar's version of the dollhouse in Hereditary. It shows us a lot of things that are going to happen later on in the film, illustrating things in the story before they actually happen, and just reaffirming them after they do. But now, just before I wrap things up, I've been waffling on for a little while now. I thought I'd just give you my 2 cents and what I thought that the film actually meant. Astor had already described it as a breakup movie, a dark, twisted fairy tale romance that perfectly explains what it is. It really does. The film is about someone, being Danny, in a toxic relationship where she doesn't actually notice how bad it is. She thinks she's the one in the wrong all of the time when in fact it's her knobhead boyfriend Christian. The villagers themselves also talk about death and rebirth, and I think with the ending, Danny smiling as she watches the sacred temple burn with her friends and boyfriend inside, is her being reborn in a way, realising that she should be valued more and that she is letting all the toxicity in her life to be burned away. There is a bit more to it than that, surely. That's about as simple as I can put it, really. Plus, I think it's about time I stopped rambling on, even though there are plenty of other things I want to talk about, like the torture of Simon. That was such a gruesome scene with awesome practical effects. He was still alive when he was hung up in that chicken coop, and what could have happened to Connie? I did do a little digging. I found out what happened to Simon was actually an ancient ritualistic way of killing that the Vikings used to use, or something along those lines. Astor had been researching Vikings shit like that for a while, and he actually implemented it into some of the ways people were killed. Just a cool little bit of info there. I'm sure there's plenty of Nordic folklore behind everything in fact, and every little rune and symbol has a meaning, but we just don't have enough time for that here in a review. If there is anything else you would like me to go into more detail on though, then let me know or just talk about it in the comments section. There's a lot to unpack, so let's get the discussion going. Once again, sorry this took me so long, but the film was delayed coming out here in Australia, which was just fucking shit, waiting an extra month. It was so annoying. Plus, I've just been busy with uni work right now. It's not been a good time, but we finally made it, and if you're here and you're still watching, I thank you. And as always, if you're still here and enjoyed this video, give it a like, and if you haven't already, then subscribe to join the club. Thank you very much for watching, and good night.